My father slammed his hand on the desk and barked, "Fire Richard, or I'll make you regret it." His 19-year-old son Tyler stood beside him, smirking like a king who owned the kingdom. In that moment, years of loyalty, late nights, and sacrifices meant nothing. I wasn't a man anymore. I was disposable, a pawn in their family's game. My heart pounded, but I didn't beg. Instead, I leaned forward, steady, and whispered, "Check your inbox first." The color drained from his face. Tyler's grin cracked. They thought they held the power, only I knew the game had just begun. The night Tyler stormed into my boss's office replayed in my head like a loop. But to understand how I got there, you need to know where it began. For 20 years, I had been the man who never left before midnight. I believed in hard work, in loyalty, in building something that would outlast me. Most nights, I worked until 2 a.m, bent over glowing monitors, solving problems that no one else could crack. My colleagues called me the backbone. Though I never demanded recognition, I thought dedication was enough. One evening, after finalizing a critical module for a new system, I trudged home long past midnight. The house was silent. My daughter's door was ajar, and I peered inside. She was asleep, sprawled across her bed, with a book still in her hand. I didn't dare wake her. I only stood there, watching her breathe, whispering apologies she would never hear. My wife stirred when I slipped into bed, muttering, "You promised you'd be home for dinner." Her voice carried disappointment, not anger. That sting hurt more than exhaustion. But the sacrifice wasn't for nothing. My design secured the company a multi-million-dollar contract, the kind that put us on the map. At the celebratory meeting, the executives praised innovation and team effort. My name was never spoken. Still, I smiled, convincing myself the silent victories mattered. I wanted to believe the company saw me. Then, one night, while reviewing the final reports, I spotted anomalies. Numbers that didn't add up. Transactions hidden in obscure subfolders. At first, I thought it was an error, but the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Someone was laundering money through our system. My stomach dropped. If this came out, heads would roll. I copied the files to a hidden drive. I told myself it was for protection, but in truth, I felt a chill, a whisper that warned me I might need this someday. That whisper would not stop. The following evening, as I packed up, my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen. I opened the message. "Careful who you trust." The blood drained from my face. I scanned the office, half expecting someone to be watching me. I locked my drawer, left the building, and told myself it was paranoia. But deep down, I knew someone knew what I had found. The cracks widened. At the next meeting, an idea I had nurtured for weeks was presented by Mark, my closest colleague, the man I once called a friend. He had stolen it, polished it, and presented it as his own. The room erupted in praise. My lips twitched in a smile I didn't feel, but inside, my chest burned. That night, I called my mother. She listened quietly, then sighed. "Richard, you're almost 50. All your friends are directors, VPs, even CEOs. Why are you still the one burning the midnight oil?" Her words cut deeper than she knew. I wanted to defend myself, to say integrity mattered, but the truth was harsher. Integrity hadn't gotten me anywhere. Days later, I walked past my boss's office and heard Mark's voice. I froze. He was inside, feeding my ideas line by line to my boss as though they were his own discoveries. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. The betrayal was quiet, casual, almost banal, but it stung worse than open hostility. He had sold me out without hesitation. The following week, I found myself excluded from meetings I once led. Calendar invites vanished. Conversations hushed as I entered the room. Colleagues who once joked with me at lunch now avoided eye contact. It wasn't anger I felt, but a suffocating loneliness, the sense of being erased while still breathing. And here is where I pause and ask you, have you ever felt like a pawn on a chessboard, moved and sacrificed without consent? You do the work. You play by the rules. Yet the game belongs to someone else. That was me, the pawn, disposable. One late evening, as I shut down my computer, voices drifted through the half-open conference door. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the name caught me. Mine. Tyler's voice, smug, youthful, echoed against the walls. If we want him out, we need to move faster. Dad will listen to me. He always does. My chest tightened. The spoiled son of my boss, a 19-year-old who strutted around like he owned the world, had marked me. And from the tone of his voice, he wasn't bluffing. The moment I heard Tyler's voice echoing in that conference room, I understood. My downfall wasn't an accident. It was a plan. Every exclusion, every stolen idea, every whisper behind closed doors. It had been orchestrated, and Tyler was pulling the strings. He wasn't just a spoiled child throwing tantrums. He was methodical, using his father's authority like a weapon to clear the path for himself. And I was the obstacle that needed to be removed. That night, I drove home with my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My wife greeted me at the door, concern etched across her face, but I forced a smile. At the dinner table, I barely touched my food. My daughter watched me, her fork paused midair. "Dad, why are you sad?" she asked. Her voice was so small, so earnest, it nearly broke me. I excused myself, muttering about being tired, and locked myself in the study. I couldn't tell them the truth, that my career, my reputation, maybe even my livelihood, was being dismantled piece by piece by a teenager with too much power. Over the following days, I studied Tyler and his father more closely. The truth was unsettling. My boss wasn't a monster. He wasn't malicious. He was weak. I saw it in the way his eyes darted when Tyler raised his voice, in the way he signed documents he hadn't read just to appease his son. He was terrified of saying no, terrified of shattering the illusion that Tyler was destined to lead. His cowardice made him complicit. That was the betrayal that cut deepest. Not that he hated me, but that he didn't have the spine to protect me. If no one else would, I would have to protect myself. I began gathering everything: emails, reports, discrepancies in the accounts. Every late night became a mission. I wasn't just working. I was archiving my life, every contribution, every trace of corruption I stumbled upon. My desk drawers filled with copies. My pockets buzzed with encrypted drives. But paranoia breeds mistakes. One evening, as I scrolled through my files, I froze. A document I had marked the night before was gone, deleted. At first, I thought I'd misplaced it. Then I checked the logs. Someone had accessed my drive remotely. My hands trembled. Someone was watching me. The warning text, "Careful who you trust," flashed back in my mind. I doubled down. I bought a separate hard drive, kept it hidden at home. Every incriminating email, every doctored number, every shadowy transaction, copied, encrypted, locked away where no one at the office could touch it. One night, as my daughter sat at the kitchen table doing her homework, I told her, half in jest, but half in truth. Sweetheart, if anyone ever tries to take credit for your work, always keep proof it was yours. She laughed, but I wasn't joking. She didn't know I was training her for a world that chews up people like me. Then came the unexpected. A colleague, someone I barely knew, slipped a folded note onto my desk one morning. I know what Tyler is doing. We should talk. My pulse quickened. Was this a trap? Another of Tyler's games? Or had I found an ally in the shadows? I didn't respond immediately. Trust was dangerous currency, but the thought haunted me. Maybe I wasn't the only one gathering ammunition. I started shaping a 2-layered plan. Layer 1, expose Tyler and the corruption from within, drag it into the light of day. Layer 2, if they crushed me before I could act, I would take everything to a competitor. Either way, the truth would burn its way out. But the question gnawed at me. Would I be willing to cross lines, even bend the law, to see justice served? And if I did, would I still recognize the man staring back in the mirror? I ask you this now. If you were in my position, would you risk everything? Your job, your family's stability, even your reputation, to destroy those who wronged you? Or would you swallow your pride, bow your head, and survive in silence? My decision was closer than I realized. Late one evening, as I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a new calendar invite. Emergency meeting. Attendance mandatory. No explanation, no agenda. My stomach tightened. When I stepped out of my office, Tyler stood across the hall, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, a grin spread across his face. He winked as I passed. The trap was closing, and this time I knew I was walking straight into it. The emergency meeting was held in the top floor conference room, a place reserved for decisions that changed careers. When I entered, Tyler was already there, his arms folded across his chest, a smug grin plastered across his face. My boss sat at the head of the table, eyes downcast, tapping his pen nervously. Other department heads filled the seats, whispering among themselves. The air was thick with expectation. Tyler slammed his palm on the table the moment I sat down. "Fire him or regret it," he barked, his voice echoing off the glass walls. His father winced, but said nothing. Instead, a folder was slid across the table toward me. Inside were printed emails and altered spreadsheets, doctored to look as if I had manipulated numbers for personal gain. It was a neat little package, ready to destroy me. I felt heat rise in my face, but I didn't speak. My eyes scanned the room. Some avoided my gaze. Others smirked. Then, from the corner, a voice broke the silence. It was Daniel from accounting, a quiet man who rarely spoke up. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "Richard wouldn't do this. He's been the one fixing everyone else's mistakes for years." The room went still. Tyler's head snapped toward him. "Shut up," he snarled. "This doesn't concern you." Daniel flinched under the glare, retreating into silence. The message was clear. No one else should dare defend me. As Tyler continued his tirade, spitting accusations and waving falsified evidence, my mind drifted. I saw my daughter's face the night she asked, "Dad, why are you sad?" I remembered kneeling beside her bed, promising that I would always do what was right, no matter how hard. That promise burned in me now, a reminder of who I was. But promises don't protect jobs. I faced a choice: accept defeat quietly, walk away with my dignity in tatters, or reveal the weapon I had been hiding, the secret files, the proof of their corruption. If I revealed it, the fallout would be catastrophic. People would lose jobs. Reputations would shatter. Yet staying silent meant betraying myself, betraying my daughter. I straightened in my chair, fixing my eyes on the man I had once respected. "Before you sign my execution," I said evenly, "check your inbox." Gasps filled the room. My boss blinked, fumbling for his phone. Tyler scoffed, rolling his eyes, but his smirk faltered as his father's face drained of color. Sweat formed on his brow as he scrolled, his lips parting in disbelief. The room fell silent. Every eye locked on him. "What did you do?" Tyler demanded, his voice shrill. The projection screen lit up with a forwarded email from my hidden drive. Spreadsheets, bank transfers, and hidden transactions flashed before everyone's eyes. It wasn't my fraud they saw. It was theirs. Years of embezzlement, tax evasion, and illegal payouts to shell companies. And Tyler's name was stamped across multiple documents. "No," Tyler stammered, his bravado slipping. "This is fake. He's framing us." But the data was too detailed, too precise. The silence of the executives spoke louder than any defense. My boss pressed a trembling hand against his temple, whispering, "Where did you get this?" The micro cliffhanger hung in the air. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My calm was answer enough. Tyler shouted, slamming his fist again and again on the table, but his father didn't move. His silence condemned him. The dilemma weighed heavy. I could release everything to the press, let the world devour them, or I could hold the files as leverage, bargaining for my freedom, my future, maybe even something more. Either path meant blood on my hands, figurative, but real enough. I rose from my chair, every eye on me, the room frozen in shock. "I told you," I said quietly, my gaze sweeping across the faces that had betrayed me. "Careful who you trust." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Tyler shouting, executives muttering, my boss whispering frantically into his phone. But I didn't look back. For the first time in months, maybe years, I smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just the small, dangerous smile of a man who knew the game had finally shifted in his favor. By the following week, the company was in free fall. Whispers that had once been confined to dark corners spilled into the open. Rumors swirled in the cafeteria, in elevators, in hushed phone calls. The files I'd released hadn't stayed hidden. They had leaked, multiplied, spreading across inboxes faster than anyone could contain them. By Tuesday morning, news outlets had picked up the story. Tech giant under scrutiny for financial misconduct, the headlines read. The stock price plummeted. Clients withdrew contracts. Meetings that once brimmed with confidence were now frantic, panicked. Tyler stomped through the halls, his swagger gone, replaced by fury and desperation. He yelled at anyone who dared look him in the eye, insisting he would fix this, even as the walls closed in. Then the twist came. Buried inside the morning news reports was a revelation. Additional files had surfaced, details I had never touched. Someone else had been gathering evidence, someone with their own vendetta. My stomach knotted. I wasn't the only whistleblower. I wasn't alone in this war. That evening, I returned home to my daughter waiting at the door. She ran into my arms, squeezing tight. "You're home early," she said with a smile. I kissed her hair and whispered, "From now on, I'll have more time for you." Her laughter filled the room, washing away the poison of the day. For a brief moment, I wasn't a soldier in a war of corruption. I was just a father. Still, the storm outside raged on. Employees speculated about who had betrayed the company, who had dared to leak the truth. Some believed it was me. Others suspected each other. The atmosphere turned toxic. Trust evaporated. Every handshake felt like a trap. And so I ask you, if you had the chance to make those who betrayed you pay, would you take it? Would you risk burning everything to ash just to watch them crumble? That night, as I sat at my desk at home, my laptop buzzed with a new email. No sender, no signature, just a single sentence. You don't know the full game yet. The message chilled me. I stared at the screen, wondering if it was a warning, a threat, or an invitation to something bigger. The following days brought escalation. Government regulators arrived at headquarters, armed with subpoenas and grim expressions. Boxes of documents were hauled out. Executives were questioned for hours behind closed doors. It wasn't just Tyler or his father anymore. The investigation had expanded into a sprawling web of corruption, deeper and older than I had ever suspected. And then came another twist. In the chaos, I learned from a quiet whisper that not every leader had been complicit. Some had been secretly working to undermine Tyler all along, feeding small bits of evidence into the cracks, waiting for the right moment to strike. The thought rattled me. Had I been a pawn in their game too? Or had we been unknowingly playing on the same side? At home, I found myself face to face with questions I couldn't answer. One night, my daughter sat beside me, fiddling with her homework. She looked up suddenly and asked, "Dad, are you a hero?" The innocence in her eyes stabbed deeper than any accusation. I swallowed hard, unable to respond. A hero doesn't drag innocence into fire. A hero doesn't risk his family's safety. I kissed her forehead and changed the subject, but her question lingered like a wound. Now, the dilemma pressed closer. Should I reveal myself, claim the role of whistleblower, and ensure the truth was fully exposed? Or should I stay silent, letting the anonymous tide carry the blame away from me? Each path held peril. Exposure meant danger. Silence meant complicity. One night, as I stared out the window, a car pulled up quietly in front of my house. The headlights cut off. A figure emerged, tall, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. My heart clenched as I recognized him. My boss. He walked slowly up the driveway, stopping at my door. When the knock came, it echoed through the house like a gunshot. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. Midnight visitors rarely bring good news. The knock at the door echoed through the house like a warning bell. My wife stiffened. Pulling our daughter close, I motioned for them to stay quiet as I approached. When I opened the door, I froze. My boss stood there, shoulders slumped, face lined with exhaustion. His once polished suit hung loose, his tie undone. He looked less like a man in power and more like someone who had been hollowed out. "Richard," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." My wife immediately ushered our daughter into the bedroom, locking the door. I could still hear her whisper, "Stay quiet," as she guided our daughter away. Fear was thick in the air. I let him in, but kept my guard high. He sank into the couch, rubbing his temples. "You think Tyler is your enemy?" he muttered. "But you don't understand. He's just a pawn." The words hit me like a blow. For months, I had built Tyler up in my mind as the spoiled villain, the arrogant son who had orchestrated my downfall. Now, my boss was telling me he wasn't the mastermind at all. "There's a group," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Investors, politicians, executives across industries. They've been pulling the strings for years. Tyler, he's reckless, but he's not the architect. He was placed there, pushed forward to protect something much bigger. I wanted to laugh, but the look in his eyes told me he believed every word. Suddenly, the missing files, the anonymous warnings, the mysterious second whistleblower, it all fit into a picture larger than I had dared to imagine. Before I could respond, my daughter's voice carried from the bedroom. "Dad, is it safe?" she asked. The fear in her tone shredded me. She had never seen me falter, never heard such desperation in my silence. I swallowed the lump in my throat and called back, "It's okay, sweetheart." But it wasn't. My boss leaned forward, desperation bleeding through. "You have proof. I have names. If we work together, we might actually survive this. If you don't, they'll erase both of us." It was a brutal dilemma. If I partnered with him, I risked becoming part of a game I didn't fully understand, tangled in webs of power and corruption that could swallow me whole. If I refused, I might lose my chance to take them down, to finally fulfill my promise to my daughter, that I would always do what was right. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder bound with string. He laid it on my table like an offering. "This is everything I know," he whispered. "And it's only the beginning." The folder sat there, heavy, almost alive with the weight of secrets. My hands itched to open it, but I hesitated, knowing the moment I did, there would be no turning back. Days blurred as I pored through the contents. Inside were records of meetings in hidden villas, offshore accounts tied to men I recognized from news headlines, even names of officials who had quietly buried scandals in exchange for favors. It was a map of rot stretching far beyond our company. And then I saw it. Familiar formatting, notes, and code embedded in files that weren't mine. Someone else had been doing what I had done, collecting, documenting, hiding evidence. My secret weapon wasn't unique. I was part of a much larger resistance. The realization brought a strange mix of relief and dread. If there were others, it meant I wasn't alone. But it also meant I was part of a war much bigger than I'd signed up for. Late one night, my computer pinged. A new message appeared, not anonymous this time. A name I hadn't seen in years. A former colleague who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, long presumed gone. "We should meet," the email read. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last." My pulse quickened. The ghost in the machine was real, and now he was reaching out. The next morning, I sat with my daughter at the breakfast table. She was doodling on her notebook, humming softly. I touched her hand and said quietly, "Justice takes time, but it comes." She looked up, puzzled, but nodded, trusting me completely. That trust weighed on me more than any file or email. Now came the hardest choice. With everything I knew, with allies emerging from the shadows, I could blow the lid off the entire industry. But doing so would hurt more than the guilty. Innocent employees would lose jobs. Families would suffer. Was justice worth collateral damage? I stared at the folder again, its edges frayed from my sleepless fingers. The path was clear, but it was brutal. By evening, I stood at my study window, the city lights flickering in the distance. My reflection stared back at me, gaunt and restless. I wasn't just deciding for myself. I was deciding for everyone touched by this system. And then it struck me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reshaping the future. The folder sat on my desk, a silent ultimatum. The folder of secrets never left my desk, but I knew The moment I chose to open it fully, my old life was finished. And perhaps that was the point. My old life had already been buried the moment Tyler shouted for my firing. The company that once defined me no longer existed, at least not in any form I recognized. What remained was a husk, hollowed by greed and arrogance. Weeks passed, and the investigation gutted the leadership. Executives resigned in disgrace. Board members scrambled to cut ties, and Tyler vanished from the headlines. For the first time in decades, I didn't have an office to report to, a schedule dictating my every move. And strangely, the silence was not terrifying. It was liberating. Then came an unexpected call. A small but growing firm, one known for transparency and innovation, offered me a role. The pay was fair, the hours reasonable, and the mission clear: to build a company where integrity mattered more than titles. At first, I hesitated. Could I trust another corporate promise after what I had endured? But when I sat across from the founders, I realized something astonishing. They were former employees of my old company. Survivors, like me. Victims who had been discarded, humiliated, or betrayed, now banded together to create something new. It was a twist I hadn't seen coming. My exile wasn't an ending. It was an invitation to a different beginning. On my first day, I left the house with a different weight on my shoulders. Not the crushing burden of secrecy, but the lightness of possibility. For the first time in years, I walked my daughter to school. She clung to my hand, chattering about her day ahead. Parents greeted each other at the gate, children rushed inside, and I stood there, watching her disappear into the building, a simple smile tugging at my lips. Such a small act, yet it felt monumental, and so I ask you, if given the chance to start fresh, would you choose to live in the shadow of power again? Or would you fight to build something honest? But the past has claws, and it never lets go easily. That evening, as I settled into my new office, a message appeared in my inbox. No subject line, no signature, just a chilling line. Different company, same disease. Will you act again? My stomach tightened. The war wasn't over. It had only shifted to new ground. Meanwhile, the old empire collapsed. News broke that the company had been dismantled and rebuilt under strict oversight. The board was purged, policies rewritten, and what remained was unrecognizable. Yet even in ruin, remnants lingered. Whispers of lawsuits filled the air, and former employees scattered to find new work. And then came news that almost made me laugh. Tyler, once the arrogant prince who had demanded my destruction, had been seen volunteering at a community center, serving meals and sweeping floors. Whether it was penance or punishment, I didn't know. My old boss, however, had disappeared entirely. No press releases, no interviews, no sightings. He was gone from the industry, erased like chalk washed from a board. Life at home shifted too. For my daughter's birthday, I was there from the first candle lit to the last slice of cake. No calls dragged me away, no emergencies stole the moment. She blew out the candles, cheeks glowing in the flickering light, and threw her arms around me. "Best birthday ever," she whispered. My wife smiled from across the room, her eyes saying what words could not. I had finally returned to them. Justice, I realized, does not always roar. Sometimes it comes slowly, quietly, after nights of despair and years of endurance. But when it arrives, it is undeniable. It may leave scars, but it also leaves clarity. The world kept moving. My new company grew, step by step, into something stronger than I had imagined. Colleagues treated each other with respect. Mistakes were admitted, not buried. And though it was fragile, I believed in it, because I believed in us, the ones who had been broken but refused to stay broken. One night, after the laughter of the birthday had faded and the house had grown quiet, I stood in my daughter's doorway watching her sleep. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. I leaned against the frame, whispering words she would never hear. Sweet revenge was just the beginning. Because I knew the truth. Revenge was never the final act. It was the spark. And somewhere out there, another battle waited.